we're talking about this as chat, but people are doing this with voice now. So
Yeah, you sent me that. We need to that. What was it? It was that phone thing. It was like somebody
yeah,
doing an
exactly.
outbound
And that
phone
was
call, and
when
it
was
was like
that?
a fucking robot.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that
when was
was
that? That was
that
months
was
ago.
a year
That
and a
was
half.
that was
Two. No,
a
no,
year. Yeah,
that was
yeah.
nearly a
I
year and a
think it
half
was
ago.
at least 6 months ago. And now, I mean,
Yeah,
I know people who are building voice things for doctors. So when someone
hmm
phones up, it's a calming
yeah.
voice talking to them, saying, "Okay, don't worry, we'll book you an appointment."
Arthur, welcome to the podcast. First time you're
Finally,
here. Yeah,
yeah.
finally got around to getting your camera and getting a mic and wearing a t-shirt. Usually he's just wearing a vest. So thought today we would cover off and talk about Chat GPT and AI. A couple of reasons why I think it's good for us to do it today because you know quite a bit about it. So you're not just like you know more than me about it, but I'd say you're a bit of a geek when it comes to this kind of stuff. But also, I discovered it and started playing around with it in when I was still running my construction company. And I remember actually going to you to ask questions, and you actually did a bit of training with my team at the time as well on how to use it. So I think it would be cool if you kind of gave us a bit of a brief and talked about it. I'm going to try and rewind and erase some of my knowledge of it, and put a hat of myself maybe a couple of years ago. When was it that it really hit? It was like 2 years ago now.
Uh, yeah,
ChatGPT.
2 years ago, November, and then it just exploded, I guess. I didn't, it's weird because I am kind of like super geeky on it. I'm not at all a tech guy though. Like, my background
Yeah,
isn't tech. I kind of like fell into a bunch of guys that know about AI and large language models, which is what ChatGPT is an example of. And then, yeah, from there, just kind of saw the power of it and
yeah.
just started devouring. But mostly what I've learned is from using it, to be honest. It's funny because I'll go around researching stuff and then usually I'll just go back to ChatGPT and ask it and then it tells me.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
let's take a step back first because let's firstly actually talk about what it is and what AI is and what Chat GPT is because I think it's easy to start talking about language models and all of that, but even I don't actually really know what do you call it, a language model
a large la-
or any,
a large
look,
language
yeah,
model, but
yeah.
in some ways I don't know, right? Like it's like,
How would you best describe it to your mum or something like that? Like,
I, I
if
mean,
if you were to
the
describe
best
what
way that
AI
I
is, what
describe it
ChatGPT is.
is more what it does. It's
Okay.
like you don't really need to know, but what it does is it creates a human-like conversation with a machine that has been, and the reason it's called a large language model is because it's been loaded with billions of data points. So imagine we've been using the internet for how long now? We've all been feeding it all this information. And now all that
Yeah.
information was out there in the ether. And it's like they've taken that information, they've just started feeding it into a machine. And the machine can talk like a human. So you can have a conversation with it and ask it something. And it kind of retains, sorry, it keeps all that stuff in its mind, in its machine mind, and can pull it out and answer super
So
rapidly.
how is that different to Google, or how would it compare to Googling something? Because I think that's where most of us are used to have kind of developed our knowledge on computers, being able to Google
Yeah.
something and get answers.
Well, Google doesn't give you an answer. Google gives you a place where the answer might be. So,
Yeah.
and then you need to go and search and check. I mean, just a caveat, you do need to check what ChatGPT says. It doesn't always say
Yeah.
the truth. But
So this is kind of
um,
like giving you the answer rather than having to the
Yeah, it's like me and
intermediary
you.
step of the source.
Yeah, me and you are having a conversation now. You're not telling me, or I'm not telling you, sorry. Oh, well, go and look at this site, and that tells you what a large language model is. Go and look at this, and this tells you how to use Chat GPT. I'm giving you the answer. It might not be right.
Yeah.
It might not be perfect. It's like that. And that's why it's Chat GPT. It's a conversation that you're
So
having
what one thing
with,
is that I think is just a bit confusing to me is or was when I first looked at it is like you hear AI and then you hear ChatGPT and sometimes they're used like interchangeably. So what's the difference and what
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
just can you
AI
just
is
explain
AI
that?
is a much bigger thing, right? Artificial intelligence is a much bigger thing. Like it encompasses way more topics, way more areas. Large language models, which ChatGPT is part of, is just that conversational element where you can just talk to something. But AI features in medicine, like space travel, all these different areas, and it's been around. Like, let's not, let's not imagine that this is just something that has come around in the past 2 years. Chat
Yeah.
GPT with OpenAI exploded past couple of years. But scientists have been trying to make breakthroughs in AI. There are papers on AI since I don't know. I think maybe the 50s.
Yeah. So I've heard that basically the AI technology and is basically it's been used in many things for years and years and years. We just don't know it as AI, or we've never really been. It's just something that's embedded in a lot of technology that we use.
Yeah,
But now it's kind of got its spotlight, and so ChatGPT is kind of like a service or a provider within the umbrella of
yeah, yeah. Because
AI.
because especially if we're talking about Chat GPT, and this is something that I often tell people is think of using other things as well, because sometimes you're getting a crap result because you're using ChatGPT, but you could be using Claude, which is the same but made by a different company called Anthropic. There are lots of different
Yeah.
models out there. And for example, I find Claude is really good for responding to emails, stuff like that, which is one of the things
hmm
I use it for loads.
So ChatGPT is like the market leader, the one that is most
Yeah,
common, and then you've got other ones that have. And are they getting all the information from the same place? Or
no, they've each team, I guess, has trained the model and built it up. I mean, I don't know the specifics of it. I'm sure there is crossover of the information that they're using.
yeah,
Chat GPT, for example, was trained on a lot of medical information actually, which is why when you talk to it, I mean, maybe not so much now, but like a while ago, a few models ago, I guess, you could almost get that vibe that it
yeah.
was very medical answers and like very technical, like a lot of medical and law stuff.
So in terms of well, how do you access it? Like, 'cause I now like I get okay, this thing that's basically pulled a load of information from the internet essentially and put it in a way that you can get that information on demand direct. You can get answers rather than a source. Okay, so I get that, but then how do I access that? Where do I go? What do I do? Do I need to pay? Is it free? Tell me about that.
So you don't need to pay. Yeah, you don't have to pay. There is a paid version. Everyone, I think, can benefit from the free version. You just go on OpenAI, ChatGPT, Google it, be the first result that comes up. You may need to sign in with, like a Google sign in, something like that. That's it, and then away you go. It's when we I'm hoping that this is just an introduction to ChatGPT. I think we could come in and show some more specific things
Yeah.
around how to use it. but it's very intuitive. Once you log, it'd be very hard to not realize what to do. Put it that way.
I think one of the things that struck me when I first started using it, and I totally agree that you got to use it to really see the power of it, is the ability to have conversations with it and to make mistakes when you type and make jokes, or to be incoherent with the way you talk, and it still picks it up. So I remember when I first used it, and it was this, I can't even remember, it wasn't even Chat GPT, it was like Chat with Elon Musk or something like that. It was when people were
Yeah.
like just playing around with it. And I was typing and I was like writing stuff like, I remember I was like, oh, Elon, why are you such a fucking idiot? Like I was just writing, I
Yeah.
just wanted to see what it
Yeah.
responded with, and it really, he would say something like, "Oh, I agree. Some people think I'm an idiot. Some people would say I'm smart," and then I would just write something like, "But you're not smart, are you?" And for me, the power of it was like it looked at my previous conversation to
Yeah.
know what I was talking about when I said, "But you're not smart." The question, "But you're not smart," wouldn't make any sense in its independent context. Like if you put it in Google, which I think is one of the things when you start playing around with it, I really realized. And the other thing when I first started realizing and playing around with it is, when you Google, you have to just kind of write in a weird way, like shoes, men, black, like things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas with ChatGPT or AI, I think on the fly you can just write as you talk. Where can I find a good pair of black shoes for men? As you write, and you don't have to tweak it to optimize the search results.
And
It
you
kind of
can,
gets what you want.
yeah, you can refine it after, right? Because in Google, it's like once you put it in, you got to start again if it's not correct. Whereas with
Yeah,
ChatGPT, it's kind of, because I do that all the time. I'm like, oh, just forget what I just said. Let's go back
yeah,
to the original question.
yeah,
That last thing I just told you, ignore that. I was
yeah,
wrong. And then I'll just,
yeah,
when
yeah,
I'm say, I don't know, playing with sort of data crunching or something, and then I put in the wrong
yeah.
information and I go, sorry, that was a mistake.
So I want to move this conversation into the construction space, and I'm interested to know from your perspective what are maybe some use cases that you've seen being used, that we've encouraged clients to use, we've helped them use, that you think are pretty cool that basically anybody could implement. So I don't want to get into the kind of more custom GPTs and stuff like that. Like we can discuss that on another thing, but I want to kind of talk about the stuff that basically somebody off listening to this can go ahead and start implementing or thinking about implementing. And if any of those you do go through, I think it would be good if you just clarify if you need the paid version for it or the free version. But
Well, I mean, talking about the paid version and the free version, I'd say for very basic things, you don't need the paid version, right?
yeah,
Just straight away, you don't. There might be some things to talk about where you could benefit from the paid version, but the the way I would look at this is what are the things that are around your business, so not your main core business, that kind of facilitate your business. So
mm-hmm.
I mean, because when we talk to construction guys, usually they're like, "Well, how can AI, how can ChatGPT help me?" I'm like, I'm going on site and I'm building stuff. Okay, do you write emails? Well, yeah. And not only do I write emails, they're fucking annoying. There you go,
Yeah,
right? All those little things around your business that you got to do to keep it ticking. For example, a really, really good use case with the emails is that client lead who's really starting to piss you off and you need
yeah,
to maintain that tone. It's the end of the day, right? And generally, a lot of people just get to their emails in one block. You can't think of that polite way of saying something. Stick it in Chat GPT and just say, I've got to reply to this email, literally copy paste it in. I want to say, I'm a construction company in London, and it will give you a perfect answer, really. Unless you're asking it for some specific, knowledge about your business. But you can, like we said, you can refine it. It's not like you need to start from scratch. You go, actually, that last line doesn't suit our business.
Yeah.
Can you change it to this? And then it does it for you.
So, yeah, because I remember actually I used that similar approach when in my company, when we had like a negative Google review that really pissed me off. And we had a client like that had similar sort of thing and recently, and it's malicious, and you spend years building this relationship, company up, and when people sort of make things up, you can get quite emotional. So that same principle, right? I guess you could apply that to that. You could copy and paste the review and say, these are the points I want to address. Please, respond to it in a good way or whatever you want to say. So that's a good insight that you're given, that you want to actually not just say respond, you actually want to say what to respond with. I mean, do you always have to do that? Can you leave it to decide, to make decisions?
Not always. And because you have the history, right? If you have one of your tabs essentially, or if you say every day you're writing emails, you're going to use this every day, and on one side of the screen it will have your previous conversation, so you can just go to your previous conversation, and if you just keep giving it your emails, it will learn and go, okay, this is how you like to respond to emails. So
it can actually mimic your tone, you mean?
Yeah, well, definitely if you prompt it, which is, the act of telling it what to do is called prompting. So if anyone goes into this and starts like reading around Chat GPT and how to use it, they'll hear that word a lot, prompting. So, I mean, a great thing is as well, we're just talking about owner operators here, but we all know that we wish our employees responded in the way that we want them to.
Yeah.
Perhaps you've got employees whose English isn't great and just they're not that confident. Well, get them to use ChatGPT. I mean, it's not right in poor English. That's certainly not going to happen. So, as one thing we've done is actually create templates for clients so their employees can then have those templates ready to go, and they prompt ChatGPT perfectly to provide the right email, whether it be, thank you for your inquiry, to sorry, we're not interested in that job, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
going on that theme of other use cases, I know I've found it useful because of that conversational ability. Sometimes, especially if you're a solo operator, found that you don't have another person, it's quite good for bouncing ideas off. So how could that functionality be used from a construction owner operator point of view? Have you seen any use cases that you think quite?
I think this is the most underrated use of ChatGPT, and I know that I'll say this and most people still won't even try it, and they won't think. It's one of those things, once you start using it, you'll start realizing, like, shit, this is really good. And it can be as basic as, and because it's got that conversational element, you go down these rabbit holes, and you find yourself chatting with it for ages, and you could start with something as simple as, my sales have dropped, my inquiries have dropped, what's happening? And it will ask you questions. So,
okay, cool.
You don't have to be super specific. Obviously, the more specific you are, the better.
Yeah.
But you could, going a bit more complicated here, but give it a persona, right? You start with a persona. So you are an expert in the construction industry in the UK, and you're an expert in acquiring leads, I don't know,
And that's
whatever.
what you mean by prompt, right? That's the prompt.
Yeah, that's part
Okay.
of the prompt. Whatever you give it is the prompt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Okay.
one way of prompting would be to give it a persona. So, for example, with the email writing, you would say, "You are an expert email
I
writer,"
see. I see. Okay.
and
So
give it that
that's
persona.
not you don't have to do that. You're giving like a
No.
tip to get better results by adding that extra bit of juice in it to give it
Yeah,
context of which hat it needs to give you to answer the
exactly.
question. Okay, cool. Okay, I
Exactly.
didn't know that.
So,
Okay.
you could then, going off that, going back to our kind of ideation thing, you would then just start talking to it. You could say to it, ask me questions if you need
Yeah,
to know
yeah.
more, and then just go down
That's
this kind
interesting because
of,
it feels like you don't necessarily need to know exactly what information you need as an outcome before going to Chat GPT to address the problem.
yeah,
So, it could be, yeah, and I can see that in construction where, maybe there's a contractual situation, client doesn't want to pay, you don't want to do the work, you're deadlocked, but it needs to happen, it needs to get resolved, and you don't know. So you could say, I don't know, you're a lawyer or whatever. This
yeah,
is the situation. I don't know what to do, and it can actually give you the questions of like, oh, have you thought about this, or tell me more about why this happened to help unlock the
yeah,
the actual solution. Which, on the topic of the kind of idea of contractual stuff, how about using it for contracts and writing? So let's say like dealing with a
yeah.
contract that's written, but writing more formal documents rather than emails for builders, especially finalizing things that's important.
I think, I mean, obviously, you got to show the stuff to a lawyer first, right? I mean, I don't want people to be going out and creating contracts and just thinking, oh no, this is definitely legit, this is fine, you know.
Yeah.
But I've definitely had stuff that I have shown to lawyers. I've had friends who have done the same, and the lawyers have said, yeah, that's pretty damn good. Like that's, and think about, if you are paying a lawyer on the hour, right? You're basically taking out so much of that work, which, I mean, another topic is that I think certain professions are screwed, um,
Yeah.
because of this.
Yeah.
And I think, like, lawyers will probably say, "Oh no, no, it's not quite. It's never going to be quite. Yeah, it's not going to be quite perfect. But if you can get it 90% there and then give it to a lawyer to check over, or if you've got contracts previously that you know are legit, and yeah, this might actually take the paid function to upload documents. You could upload those documents and go, okay, these are
Hmm.
my previous contracts. Got another job coming up that's pretty much the same, except these are the differences. Can you create me a
Yeah.
contract based on those?
Yeah.
Um,
And so
so
I guess that is a bit of a reoccurring theme in that you're not saying with any role that it's doing it's 100%. It's like taking any administrative content writing task to the 90% and then the human refining that sort of last 10-20%, whatever it is.
yeah, I think definitely you need some oversight, right? But I think as owners, business owners, you also need to think about, where do I not need the 100%? You know, maybe that
Yeah.
email where you're telling a client to fuck off doesn't need to be 100%, right?
Yeah.
Just send it, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's done anyway. So you may as well just save the
What
time.
about the social media side of things? Because I know a lot of guys, it's a ball ache, right? Like
Yeah,
posting and being excited about the 88th extension they've done this year, and that that's hard to
yeah.
look enthusiastic. So what do you think about that side of using it to promote on your socials, I don't know, writing leaflets, flyers, like managing
Perfect.
content and all of that.
Perfect for that. And if you can load it up with some of the stuff that you've written before, so it can learn your style and start to imitate it. And then also to go, don't repeat this. Don't make sure it's not word for word like these. These are the posts that I've put up before. You could even on I don't know, one Sunday, if you've got this much time, literally preload a load of have a bank of stuff
Hmm.
just ready for the next 2 months, so you don't have to think about it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and
So do
every
it in
format as
batches.
well,
Yeah.
right? You could go, look,
Yeah. Yeah.
the platforms we use are Instagram and Facebook. Please create me stuff that's perfect for Instagram, and then the same stuff, change it and make it perfect for Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is actually like kind of two questions in one. So there's I remember when I was starting in especially in a new industry of construction that I didn't have experience in, I used Google heavily. I'd say yes to the client as if I knew what to do and then go and Google it to work out what to do. So I can see that replacing this definitely in terms of I don't know how to build this or what's the standard detail on this or what are the regulations on this. So that's part one of my question is like, how do you go about using that? And part two, which hopefully you can answer, is like, how up to date is this information? Because particularly with building, you've got building regulations that will get updated. So is it always up to date with the information, or is there like, I don't know how this works. Is it like rolling up to date,
Yeah,
to -6 months?
it's not real time, right? If you're using Chat GPT, especially the free version, it's not real time, and you can find out. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I used to know like each update. Oh, it's up to, but
Yeah.
it gets closer and closer each time. It's getting closer and closer. However, there are other tools that you can use. One I often use is called Perplexity AI, which again is free. It for me it's pretty much replaced Google. I cannot remember the last time I Googled something because I
Mm-hmm.
just go on Perplexity because Perplexity is the same but connected to the internet. So
Yeah.
then you're kind of like asking these questions that you're saying, and it's going through Reddit and finding conversations that people have had or are having and then giving you the answer. While Chat
So
GPT, and
is
we're
it?
just talking about Chat
Yeah.
GPT, might not be able to do that. There's stuff out there that you
How I know you said it, which is fine. Like, maybe we can have it pop up on the screen, like how up to date it is now when we release this. But roughly, how what are we looking at? Like, is it 5 years behind? Is it two
No, it's a
years?
couple of months. I think right now it's a
Uh huh.
couple of months. It may. I mean, the thing is, unfortunately, because I'm so used to using the paid version now. I'm
Yeah.
trying to. I don't want to make a mistake and say something about the
Yeah.
free
So the
version
paid
because I
version
do
is
know.
more up to date, is it?
Yeah, in the paid version you can
Is that
put
one of the
in
benefits? Okay.
links and it literally checks out a website now. If you see what I mean.
But is it so let's use an example of two different data points that I want. Okay, one is a very well-known one. So let's say I just want to know what the interest rates are currently, because I want to make sure that my prices of timber are kind of related to that. So that is very published information, and
Yeah,
the other side is, let's say it's a very niched piece of information, like what's the current U value requirements on this type of construction in this kind of setting. So it's not, on a key government website. But let's say that information was updated in the internet at the same time. Is that a guarantee that that more niche piece of
it's
information
not.
will also be updated? Basically, another way to ask it is the prominence of that information on the internet. Do you know if that makes a difference on how easily and how responsive the Chat
Yeah,
GPT
and
will
and
pick up?
and I'd also say that like it's important to note that ChatGPT can hallucinate. right? And this is
Okay.
another term
It's a weird word.
people will come across, which is, it makes stuff up. If it doesn't know, it might make stuff up. You can also say to it like, don't make anything up, but it still might
Right.
try and fill in the gaps for you, as we do, right? As we do
Yeah,
when
yeah,
we
yeah.
converse, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
that's something to be aware of. And the more kind of obscure niche the thing is, the more likely. What I would
Okay.
say is actually do it a few times and check it. So play around with it and
I'll ask
check.
questions you already know the answer to,
Yeah,
sort of
ask
thing.
questions you know the answer to,
Okay.
see how close it is, and then go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
pretty good. And the other thing you can
Yeah.
do is like load it up. Like I said, the paid version, you can load it up with documents, for example. So if there are some documents, if you've been pricing jobs in a certain way and stuff, you can like load it up and then start
You,
kind of using it
you
in
know, I
that
think,
way.
I think, yeah, because off before we started recording, we were talking about this subject. You sort of said, let's not show our screen because most people just need to use it to learn it, and most people will use it once and sort of fuck it off as it's not useful.
Yeah,
And probably because I think, and I think I maybe even did this. I went in to see a very specific technical building question that I knew off the top of, off the back of my hand, what's it going to give? And it gave a completely wrong answer, and it hallucinated, as you said. You used that term, and I think that the thing with ChatGPT is it says it so confidently, and it doesn't say it's hallucinating. You've got to kind of know,
yeah,
unless you do what you said. But it's easy to say, oh, that's completely wrong. But then and that's comparing it to yourself. But if you compare it to like your second or third right hand man in your company, or maybe fourth, and they gave an
yeah,
answer like that, you would be like, that's some seriously good blagging, like nice,
yeah,
So actually, it's not, especially if you're using it in an owner operator sense and you're trying to not necessarily replace your team, but what would you use a term like facilitate or help or aid them to get closer to what you want them to do? Then actually,
yeah,
if you lower that standard a bit, it's actually really, really good. One thing, like moving on, I wanted to share an experience with you. I don't think I told you this. When I first started playing around with it, there was this build where I just had this really annoying neighbor, and we couldn't get the job off the ground in terms of starting the work. And they basically didn't want to sign the party wall agreement as to whether the work could start before we produced this detailed method statement of how we were gonna. I think it was like prop the roof, to hold it, and it was kind of above and beyond what we would usually do. Like it was going to take some time for us to do. Usually, if I was told my team have got to do that to get a job on board, I would go back to the client and say, look, that's not standard for us. We haven't allowed for that. Basically, we've got to bill you to do
yeah,
that, because either we have to do it or we have to hire somebody. And I remember I was playing around with ChatGPT at the time, and this thing came up, and my team member asked me, "Look, what should I do? Should we just do it or what?" And I was like, "Nah, don't worry about it. We'll do it." Because I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to throw it into." So I literally just threw their email into their request, and said, yeah, I don't think I even at that time I didn't really know about prompting and things like that, and it came back with something like pretty spot on. In my head, I was like, I wouldn't, if I paid somebody to do that, I wouldn't really to, think it was that bad. And also, I knew the document came from. I knew the guy asking for the document didn't actually care about how we were going to prop the roof. He just wanted to like make
yeah,
shit hard, basically. I didn't actually send it, but I kind of approved it to be sent, and I didn't even tell my team that it was generated through ChatGPT. I was just like, "Oh, just let me deal with it." I think they maybe thought I wrote it. And basically, the next day, their solicitor came back and was like, "Oh, thank you for sending this, but it appears that this has been written by some sort of like, and I think he knew because I think he used that language model thing. The word you
Yeah,
said, it appears this has been used by a language model or something like that. And the reason I'm bringing that story up is because I can see, others just seeing it and being like, shit, yeah, that's going
yeah.
to save so much time. Let's get using it. And by eye, I couldn't necessarily see what was giving it away.
My
So,
yeah. I mean,
firstly, first
like,
question is
yeah.
is is there sort of softwares out there that someone can detect whether it's AI generated? And secondly, are there some tips that you can give to stop that potentially happening, other than obviously you checking it and maybe editing it, but which is obvious.
Okay, I would say yes, there are, but it's been shown that they're not super accurate. It's like AI detecting AI. You
Hmm.
know, its tests have shown that it's not super accurate, and especially if you are looking at people whose language, English is not their first language. So certain people, when they write in English, write in a more strict robotic way because it's not then their first language. So then people pick that up, and then these machines have been known to pick that up as AI when actually it's just, I don't know, a, a Chinese student
Yeah,
writing an essay, and it's
yeah,
getting picked up
yeah.
as AI because just the way they write,
Right,
right?
okay.
The other thing is, that was one. I'm trying to think what your other question was.
I was asking about whether there's software, which you've answered, but also other than you as the human, the person writing it, checking and editing the answer to make it not completely AI. Is there any other things that can be done to make the results, um,
Well,
you know,
I mean,
less
I don't know
detectable?
if
Let's
you
say.
need
Or,
to. All right, put it this way. Your example is is like because you just blagged it, right? That was different. You just blagged it.
mm, mm,
But my response, if I looked through and it was correct, my response would have been, it seems to me that your letter was written using word processor.
hmm.
So what?
Yeah, it's true.
Like, because if
Yeah,
I don't have time, but I check through and I'm like, oh yeah, that's all legit. That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. That's exactly what I wanted to say, but I don't have time to write a 5 page document
yeah.
or something. Well, that's what it is. It's like
But realistically, the
the
market is
information
not
is the
there
information
to
is,
accept
isn't
that,
it?
right?
Well,
Yes, a lot. I
the
can
thing
see
is, he
that
used
they're
appears to
looking at
be
it as
because
inferior, but
there's no he can say it with certainty, right? You can say
yeah,
no, say no, it's not.
yeah.
But
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 what I
I,
mean is, like, in general conversations, AI is still quite new, so people look at it as like a shortcut,
yeah.
like a, oh, you're skimping on something.
So one thing I don't know how kind of first of all, if the machines aren't accurate, like,
Yeah,
and they're picking up false positives, right? How do you how do you really create something that's always going to go through as human wrote it? But there are things you can do. I often do is I get something in Chat GPT and then I take it to Claude. So
oh, okay.
I get it produced because I find that Chat GPT, as I said, it's still a bit robotic. Not because I don't think but just because I don't like the language. I don't think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
as friendly as human like. So and then I will take that and then I'll put it into Claude and then I'll say please improve this and change the tone, improve the tone, make it more formal, make it more informal, things like that.
So is Claude, you find Claude is better for like the conversational output, but
And
ChatGPT is
creative,
better for the actual
creative
input.
writing.
Is
So
there a model, or like, I'm just going to call it a chat thing, because I think everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say that. Is there a chat thing that is UK based? And I use the term UK because we're based in the UK, but because one thing I found when I've tried to make it look more realistic in language terms, I'll say something like, "Oh, you're," like when I try and prompt, I would say something like, "Oh, you're a English builder," and it will just come up with like "Oi, mate," like, and then I'll also write, "I'll try not to be too formal," and it would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
sort of like Del Boy and Rodney talking, and it just
yeah,
seems like comedy sort of thing. And maybe, and I thought maybe that's because it's an American software, like most things are, and they've got their perceptions of how people in certain country would talk, and it's just learning from there. But so yeah, firstly, is there a UK based one? But also, could I prompt better to make it understand me what I'm talking about? Is it going back to what you said
yeah.
before, like putting in more examples of how you want to communicate? Is that the best way?
It's one of it's one of the most frustrating things, actually, I think, about ChatGPT, and I would say, everything isn't perfect. There are annoying things about it. But first of all, going back to your first question, not that I know of. I don't know
Hmm.
of any language model, any kind of chat thing that is like UK based. There's like French, there probably is. To be fair, there probably is.
Mm.
It's probably nowhere near as big as ChatGPT and OpenAI. But the the problem with ChatGPT is no matter how many times I say only use British English, I always find myself going back and saying, "Oh, you've missed something there." Like, remember, British
Mm.
English only, that kind of thing. And there is a function in there to kind of have, I guess, pre-prompts, like, um, so you can say, based in the UK, only use British
Mm.
English and kind of have those preset things. But even then,
Hmm.
it doesn't always stick to them. That's got to be admitted. Like, it's not. They
Yeah,
could
yeah.
improve in that.
I think it's worth adding as well. Like in the last, did you say it's 2 years since it kind of launched properly
I
to the
feel like it
public?
is. It is November
It's improved
2020.
massively, hasn't it? They're really
Yeah,
aggressively updating it, tweaking it, and changing it.
it
And and
might be
and
more.
something that going back to the use case, I'm thinking I've never done it myself because English is my first language. But let's say you've got a Polish guy that is running his business in the UK, or maybe not necessarily the operator, but his team is Polish. They know what they want
Yep.
to say in Polish, but also they want to converse in Polish because they're just better at doing it. Can you use that to
I
have
had.
the conversation in
Yeah.
Polish and say now do it in English, or do you have to copy and paste that into Google Translate or translate it mentally? Like, can you speak in different languages?
So
And is that a kind of use case?
I lit. I. This is the thing, right? I hadn't really thought about this. I don't know why I hadn't thought about this. It was a friend of mine who is a site manager on a commercial job. It's a warehouse, massive warehouse fit out. And he said, I introduced him to ChatGPT, but I didn't realize he was like using it. He'd gone off and actually started using it and stuff. And he got the app on his phone. And with the app on the phone, you can talk to it and it talks to you. And what he did, he had to talk to a carpenter who's Ukrainian. And he said his English is like really, really low. And he needed to, relay some information to him and find out where he's at and all these sorts of things. And he said generally what people are doing is they're just like, oh, just let him get on, just ignore him and kind of
Yeah.
just let him get on with stuff. And when we need to tell him a specific job to do. But what he did was he got the app and he said, I want you to be my interpreter. I'm going to speak to this guy, I don't know what his name was, Slav, I think his name was Vyacheslav. And he said, I don't know, I think they used Russian actually. He said, I don't know Russian, I only know English. He doesn't know English, he only knows Russian, right? And then they just spoke like that. And then the app acted as the interpreter in between. Let's say the guy's
Hmm.
name's John, and he says, John is trying to tell you all in Russian. And then the guy was saying, "Oh,
A-
this is the
And I
problem, blah blah
guess
blah," and then yeah,
the where that goes further than the Google Translate conversation function is it also can give answers as well. Like Google is just literally translating, but you could actually say in that conversation, let's go to that scenario, you could say, tell Slav what the spacings on the fixings he should be
Yeah,
installing are, and it can search that and actually give that rather than the site manager needing to know what the spacings and fixings
yeah,
are, kind of thing, right? Cool.
yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
And
So,
like, I mean, going back to the
yeah, go on.
language thing quickly was, I think I've been encouraging people to do this because I think it creates a working environment where people feel more welcome. Is to just,
Yeah,
if you've got a bunch of Polish, Ukrainian guys that are on your team, just when you're releasing some information, just have it in all the languages. I mean, I know we have
yeah,
translators and stuff like that, but you can, if you're prompting it to create the announcement, for example, then just tell it,
yeah,
give it to me in three different languages, these
yeah,
languages.
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
I know from
that's,
personal experience that goes a long way with just translating something to somebody's first language, especially if it's something like health and safety related, welfare based, kind of about pay.
yeah,
Just let you know, pay run next week is delayed because of the bank holiday. These guys, if you're
yeah,
reading it on site quickly, it's so much easier. And by the way, I actually I've never heard of someone saying, "Oh, his English was really low," but I really like that rather than saying bad. I've never heard that, but I actually really like. I'm gonna try and use that much more because usually my tendency is to say, "Oh, you got really bad English,"
yeah.
or yeah,
Not,
that's good.
I guess like not proficient
Where's that
in
come from?
English. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a nice way to put it. One thing I wanted to cover off and talk to you about is over reliance on use of ChatGPT, because I, as employer, particularly, but also in my personal self, have seen. But let's talk about employer first. Is seen, people with really good applications to jobs, and then you speak to them, and it's just like, and I feel like this has come up with ChatGPT, where people look very different on paper to what they write, and where I think it can apply as an individual is I feel like there's a risk that we, as entrepreneurs, problem solvers, the head of companies, could lose that skill by relying on this kind of super smart guy that you've just got access to in your pocket, kind of thing. So I know you've previously, because I've come to you about that before, haven't I? I've talked to you, I feel like this and feel like that. So have you got any kind of insight, thoughts, like control that you would suggest to put in place to make sure, maybe from a personal sense first, that you don't get over reliant on this being the source of all your problems? Because sometimes, obviously, if you're on site with the architect, the subby, you're not going to be able to just get your phone out and ask ChatGPT. You still need to be able to come up with solutions, and I think you need to keep that fresh as well, right? You don't want to just rely constantly on this thing.
Yeah, I don't really use it personally. I don't see it as solving my problems,
Mm,
and it gives me ideas. The ideation type thing is it's giving me ideas and then I make the decision. I kind of see it as, you've got an advisor. You know, the king doesn't all if the king always just listened to the advice everything the advisor said, then the advisor would be king, right?
hmm
You have to have, and I think that is the highest skill. Our time is often taken up figuring out, researching, oh, this, that, and the other, which definitely there's value in that. We don't want to lose that completely. But what I've come to realize is, I mean, I generally use it for stuff that I think yes, I could do this. I actually 100% could do this because I'm in my 30s. I've been doing that stuff for years. It's one thing I've said to you before. We're at, I think we're just at this age where we get to use the benefits of these things, but we're not going to be ruined in kind of our whole education being,
hmm
well, just use ChatGPT because I see
hmm
that as well.
hmm
So I
hmm
think
hmm
I think your
hmm
question is more for younger generation than the current
Yeah. Yeah.
owners. I think current
Yeah, I see what
owners
you
are
mean.
probably
In
the other
terms of the
side,
guys
right?
coming up on site management, coming up through maybe apprenticeships and
Yeah,
degrees and all of that,
yeah.
is
Because if you
how are
go
they
through
getting
your
their runs
apprenticeship,
in if they yeah.
yeah, and you're just like, oh, I'll just chat GPT this and find it out. Well, because we all know that part of part of getting to where you get to is the mistakes that you make and the little fuck
Yeah,
ups
yeah,
here and
yeah,
there, and
yeah.
then you're like, oh, I'm never
Yeah,
gonna forget that again. I'm never gonna forget that
yeah,
again
yeah,
because
yeah.
that time that so
Yeah.
I think those guys need to think about that
Mm.
more. And yeah, and to your point, they do need to limit what they use it for, maybe. And the thing is, it's just going to get smarter and smarter. And so
Hmm.
the jobs it can do is just going to grow and grow to the point where there's there's probably
Yeah. So I want to let sort of wrap this up, but I don't want to wrap it up without giving you. I'm sure you're dying to geek out here, so just give you an opportunity to talk about further applications than the basic stuff we've talked about. Like, because I know you're much more on the sort of forefront of what's happening now, and what some of the more advanced construction companies, forward-thinking construction companies, and other tech companies are using this sort of stuff for. So give us a taste of like some cool things you could think are on the cusp of being done, or maybe already being done.
I mean, there's loads of stuff that the cusp. I don't. The thing is, it's so rapidly advancing that the moment you think you know what's on the cusp, someone else like we were doing that months ago, you know. Um, so I'll talk about kind of the really cool stuff I see that um actually is stuff that if construction companies just knew about it, they could actually really help their businesses, and you know, it wouldn't be too hard to implement. One of the things is something I think I showed you, I sent it to you ages ago, so it's pretty old now, is, having people video the interior of their home if they're going to do a
Yeah.
remodeling or something, and then the measurements getting taken. Another one is, which I've seen, which I think would be really useful for some trades, is having someone be able to video their, say, kitchen, and then it kind of not even superimposes it generates the image or the video of their kitchen with the different options of what they could
Okay.
have, or
So it's
carpets.
kind of more in the sort of visual side because we've up till now just been talking about the wordings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's okay, so it's the sort of
So think
design,
about if you go to a
and we
carpet
should
shop and
definitely
you're like feeling the carpets, it's like,
yeah
oh, this
yeah
one might
yeah
be nice. This one. Instead of that, you have a picture of your bedroom and you go, yeah, I want to change the carpet in this room. And they go, oh, do you want
yeah.
this one? Do you like this? Do you like the look of that?
So this
And
stuff actually is out there, or you
yeah, yeah, people are using this.
we definitely we I mean we definitely should do an episode where you share your screen and show some of this stuff how it looks because
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. And there's this idea of custom GPTs, which is I guess it's like so you don't have to keep putting the same source information in.
yeah, yeah. I
How
mean,
complicated is that?
that's that is super easy, but for most people, that's going to keep you on the Chat GPT platform. Like, in order to use that, you're going to have to stay on there. There are ways of then taking those custom GPTs. Actually, let's just go back and explain what it is. So, for anyone on the paid version of Chat GPT, you can create your own mini Chat GPT. What would be the use of that? Well, let's just say this email example that we've been using quite a lot today. You can have your, Bob the Builder Limited email writer, and then you just have that always ready, and you can always just say, write me a proposal email, write me a thank you email to this person, and it will already know all of those things that you previously would have had to say, this is how I write, this is an example of
Yeah,
my
yeah.
previous emails and stuff like that. It's
Which
just
I can
there to
imagine
go.
that would be really helpful for if you've got a team in your office that you want to use this, but you don't want them to suddenly be bogged down with putting all this information into Chat
Yeah,
GPT, that, you've got one for your company. And I know you were talking to, yeah, as a side note, actually, I would just say if anyone does want to explore that option, that's definitely something you could build out under Dynamic Assist, our consultancy
yeah,
service as well, right?
yeah. And I'd say actually a more kind of a next step to that would be to then take that and build a chatbot or a system for your business which is connected to it.
Yeah.
And then that would be like your staff hub. They could always chat to it. It could be, Bob the Builders on the website. You could have an internal facing website for your staff. And then you'd be like, tell me what to do in this situation. And then it, goes into your
Oh, okay.
system, finds the
So,
document.
okay, so that's like a Google. No, it's like ChatGPT for your own company, the
Yeah.
information within
So
your company.
So if you're fully digital, you got all your documents, you got all your kind of SOPs in place of when we get a complaint for this, this is how it's dealt with. When we have a late
Uh-huh.
invoice payment, this is how it's dealt with. You've got a new employee that doesn't know how to, what do I do in this situation? They can just chat and then it finds the SOP and
Yeah,
says, oh, in this situation, Bob the Builder Limited, they do this. And
I can see
that's
that
what you do.
being a good, because I remember when I had got sort of quite removed from the operations, the day-to-day dealing with the business. One of the things that still is a bit of a time sink is that answering those kind of questions. You've built this whole library essentially of resources, and it's all in your head, but you've tried to map it out. But then if someone could or something could handle that question first, it probably handle like 50% of it could probably be handled before it got to me. What about on the topic of chat bots though? Like one thing I've been noticing is um, with more bigger companies, when you go on their websites, you can see that their like customer facing bots have gotten much better. How is that, like, you need millions of pounds to do that, or like how far is that from reaching, a construction company that maybe wants to have chat functions for sales or chat functions for their clients? Is that
Not
quite
No, I think that one of the things that's happened is one of the things about AI and this kind of advancement in AI is what I call the democratization of these things. Is like before only the biggest companies could have the resources to implement something like that. Now anyone could have a chatbot that is powered by AI that answers the customer in natural language. You know that annoying sort of thing of you're trying to find the answer to this issue and it's just that robotic or click
yeah,
this or this.
yeah,
No
yeah,
one
yeah,
needs that anymore. No one needs to have
yeah,
that. You know,
yeah,
well, we've done this, create a persona for the
yeah,
chatbot that is then the worker for that company and they are chatting
yeah,
to that person. And if they
yeah,
can't get the answer immediately, it tactfully says to the client, let's just say John is their project manager. I know John's your project manager. He'll get back to you. If not, you can
hmm
always call him
hmm
on this number, email him on this number. So yeah, those things are really accessible now, and it's something that people should be thinking about more.
yeah. Yeah, because I've definitely noticed a difference in the quality of like chatbots when I interface with any bigger companies, and I think that's important because then that sort of stuff filters down once the general public get more accustomed to using the quality chatbots. And because, as you said, but currently and maybe a few years ago, it was, you hated having to go to the chat, but if you could get it to that point where it was, and And I've even heard of this like idea of hybrid AI chats, right, where it's like part human and part thingy, where you can, and maybe
Yeah.
that's like quite far off, but where
No, no. I
one
mean,
person
you
can
can.
handle
That's
multiple chats, but
that's
they don't
completely
have to.
possible now.
Yeah,
So for example, I mean, if you're talking about a human can jump in, so you can have it so a chatbot is handling client inquiries, but then if certain triggers happen, a human jumps in. So you might
yeah,
have
but they don't
your
necessarily
support
know on the
staff.
other end is flicking
Yeah,
back and forth, right?
no,
Which I think
no.
is cool because there's obviously that it's just reducing the distractions of like cutting your day out to handle that, or the need to have a whole project coordinator just dealing with these types of things
Uh,
as
and
well, and
and
of course like it being real time, right?
we're talking about this as chat, but people are doing this with voice now. So
Yeah, you sent me that. We need to that. What was it? It was that phone thing. It was like somebody
yeah,
doing an
exactly.
outbound
And that
phone
was
call, and
when
it
was
was
that?
like a fucking robot.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
when was that? That was
that
months
was
ago.
a year
That
and a
was
half.
that was
Two. No,
a
that was
year. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a
I
year and a
think it
half ago,
was
I
at
think.
least 6 months ago. And now, I mean,
Yeah.
I know people who were building voice things for doctors. So when someone
Hmm.
phones up, it's a calming
Yeah.
voice talking to them, saying, "Okay, don't worry, we'll book you an appointment, etc."
Yeah, we definitely need to do an episode to get some of this stuff and actually listen to it. So cool. That was really good. Really enjoyed that. I think I actually learned quite a lot of things and reminded me to do some of the things, particularly the idea of prompting when using Chat GPT, and actually also putting more stuff into the model when you're getting results. But what basically to get better results is that old age thing of shit in, shit out, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
with ChatGPT. If you
definitely.
if you if you you're putting
Garbage
shit
in, garbage out.
information in, then you're limited with how much it can actually give you. Amazing, cool. Thanks a lot.
All right,
Speak to you later.
great. Bye.